The Success in South Florida podcast is brought to you by the team at Rossen Law Firm. If you need DUI or criminal defense representation, call the Rossen Law Firm at 754-206-6200 or check the description of today's episode for more contact information. The Rossen Law Firm, helping good people when bad things happen so they can achieve their best futures.
Welcome to Success in South Florida, featuring interviews with entrepreneurs, leaders, and other movers and shakers across South Florida to find out how they're doing their part to enhance the local community. Your host is Adam Rossen, the founder and CEO of the Rossen Law Firm. Adam's an award-winning attorney, former prosecutor, and a lifelong South Florida resident. He became an attorney because he believes in helping those in need and in crafting lifelong relationships in the community. This podcast is an extension of that mission. Let's get to today's interview. Here's Adam Rossen.
Welcome back to another episode of the Success in South Florida podcast. I am your host, Adam Rossen, and on today's episode, we have Jonathan Rosa. And Jonathan, you have your own fractional CFO company. You have, you grew up with a father who is in the restaurant industry for years and years, and you assist entrepreneurs in gaining a clear vision of their business. So welcome to the show, Jonathan. And if there's anything else that you'd like to really just introduce yourself with, feel free. Tell us who you are and why you are a successful person in South Florida.
Adam, thanks for having me. It's an honor. Really excited to be here. Quick background on me is I'm originally from Boston, born to Brazilian immigrants. Been in Miami since 2015, so I consider Miami home at this point. And we've been working with a lot of small businesses in here and back in my hometown in Boston for 4 years now, helping them better understand their business finances, improve profits, get better control of their cash flow. And that's the basics of what we do.
Awesome. So you grew up in Boston, like you said, to Brazilian immigrants. Well, tell us more about your origin story, right? If you were a Marvel superhero, the first movie is always the origin story. So, tell us about kind of your parents and, did they really bring that immigrant kind of work ethic and lifestyle to the home? Was it talked about? What were the kind of the dinner table conversations that you had growing up?
Yeah, absolutely. So my parents moved to Boston from Brazil in the early 90s. My dad's from Rio, my mom's from São Paulo, and I was born shortly thereafter. And I grew up, and my dad has basically all of my life been in the restaurant industry. So he worked in, Faneuil Hall for, like 30 years. And when I was born,
he saw all the tourists.
He did, yeah.
Hall, right.
Yeah, and it's a really cool story because he started there. My mom spoke a very little bit of English. My dad spoke absolutely no English. And, they moved to the US, learned English, by working and going to, some English as a second language courses. My dad worked as a dishwasher in a couple restaurants, worked in restaurants for a couple years. And by the time I was around 7, my dad bought his first restaurant. And when I was about 9, my dad actually bought a restaurant in Faneuil Hall and actually ended up owning the restaurant that he started out as a dishwasher in when I was a baby.
That's an amazing story.
Yeah, so he obviously was my inspiration growing up. I always grew up in and around the restaurants that my dad owned. And my original dream was to be a business owner, right? I looked up to my dad and said, I want to be a part of the family business, or I want to start my own business. I saw this as my destiny. And I ended up going, so to continue the story, when I was 15, we also moved to Brazil. We lived in Brazil for a couple years in my dad's hometown. So I got to, live that experience for a while, go to school in Brazil, and that was actually an awesome experience. And then my whole family moved back to Boston. I went to college for finance at Boston College. And, funny story is, like, I always wanted to be a business owner. And I thought that when I went to college, being a first generation immigrant and also first generation to go to college, I thought I was going to learn how to, be a business expert and master by getting my bachelor's in finance. And in the middle of that journey, obviously, I figured out that wasn't going to be the case. So about halfway in, I started to look for internships, was interested in finance, and given my background in restaurants and my passion for the industry and my backstory, I ended up interning first at one of the headquarters for Panera Bread, which was actually like 15 or 20 minutes away from college. And that was my first internship. And then I later got a job down in Miami at the Burger King headquarters, and
Nice.
that's where I
Well,
got my corporate
well,
experience.
Jonathan, so, going back to what you said, Boston College is a great school. And so was it more that college doesn't really teach you how to actually run a business and most of the practical skills, and it was more of the theoretical, academic part? Or was there something about that, that college that just didn't lend to, really teaching you how to, be a business owner? What do you think it was?
No, I thought the college experience was fantastic. Boston College is a great business school for undergrads. I definitely can't complain about the experience I had. But I realized that there was just so much more to be explored, especially realizing how many other, big companies went to recruit at these schools. And I knew nothing about that experience. And once I started to realize that, I realized that if I did not pursue that and get some real world corporate experience, I was probably leaving, some big opportunities on the table. And I figured, I might as well take advantage of that opportunity and get some experience outside, before I pursued the small business career.
And were those internships that you did like summer internships? Did they were they during school, or was it post grad internships?
So I started a bit late. So I only kind of realized this going into junior year. So I ended up doing like a small internship with like a company called Senior Living Residences in Boston. And that was just like a project that I did in the summer between junior and senior year. And then in senior year, I continued looking for internships, and I actually interned at Panera while I was in my senior year, kind of trying to catch up. And in senior year, I started to also look for full-time opportunities. And that's when I came across the opportunity to work at the Burger King headquarters here in Miami. A fellow alum had started about a year and a half before. And I connected with him, and he suggested, no, you got to come down. Burger King had been acquired by a Brazilian private equity company called 3G Capital. And for that reason, there were a bunch of Brazilians that worked there at the time. So I kind of connected a bunch of dots, right? A bunch of Brazilians that worked there in the restaurant space, would learn a lot about business and finance and all that stuff. So it really, all worked out pretty
Yeah,
well.
seemed like a great opportunity. And so at the Rossen Law Firm, we have a summer internship program. And at the time that we're filming this, we just finished our 2023 summer program, and we had an amazing time. We had 7 amazing interns, and we'll take somebody, usually 1 or 2 people in the fall and 1 or 2 people in the spring, but the summer is really our flagship program. And my big belief is I don't care what somebody, if somebody's with us for the entire time and they say, hey, great time, but I don't want to be a lawyer after being here, I look at it and I say, fantastic, we've done our job. If they come here and they say, I had a great time and now I can cross criminal law completely off my list, and now I want to look into real estate or corporate law, fantastic, we've done our job. Or same thing if they say, nope, defense, I want to be a prosecutor, right? The criminal defense is not for me. Fantastic, we've done our job. Because school only teaches you so much, even when it's law school. And we take interns who are in high school, college, and law school. But I feel like so many people are pressured into, well, go get a business degree, go to law school, go to medical school, go be an accountant, go do finance, do this, do that. When, their parents might force them into it or pressure them into it because they think it's a high paying job, right? Or that's just what they have been told is quote unquote success, right? And on this show, we, just from me being, owning a law firm, we interview lawyers, and we've had some doctors and accountants and business people, entrepreneurs, but it doesn't mean that that's the only way to be successful, is in that, a highly schooled, a high education, white collar profession. There's many different versions of success. So anywhere I lecture or talk to people, I say, look, come and spend time with us. You may love it, you may hate it. I don't care. Obviously, of course, I would love if they love it, but as long as I've helped you move along towards the best decision for you, because as I'm sure especially dealing with entrepreneurs, a lot of people can just punch in and punch out for 8 hours a day, and they're miserable when, that's a big part of your life is, what do you do for work? Who do you work with? Right. And even with entrepreneurs, sometimes they can be unhappy through the grind or get lonely. So, you just really need to know what you're in for, regardless of what it is, and then either move you forward to a better, to making that best decision for you, because you certainly don't want to wake up one day at 40 years old and go, oh my God, I just wasted the last 15, 20 years of my life. What am I doing? Right. And I got some friends who are down that road, and it's not cool. It's not a good way to live your life. So, so it's fantastic that you went through these internships. And, so when you were done at Burger King, what did you do next?
So I spent about 4 years at Burger King. So
So after the internship, you stayed.
actually, it was an internship. It was my first job already.
Oh,
So
okay.
I had an internship between junior senior year at this small company in Boston. During senior year was at Panera as an intern, and then I got a full-time offer for Burger King.
Okay, gotcha. And moved down to Miami. Did you know anybody in Miami?
No, I didn't know anybody.
Okay, so young guy, right, moving down. The good thing is there's a nice Brazilian community in South Florida, and you said that there was a lot of Brazilians that worked for Burger King. So was it easy to make that transition into first job, career, new city?
Yes and no. I think the fact that there were a bunch of Brazilians already working there did help me for sure. It was me and my wife at the time because I met my wife also in Brazil, and we got married pretty young. But the people at work were helpful. We also went out and networked. We went to a local Brazilian church when we got here, and we met a bunch of people there. But we did have to discover kind of like the neighborhoods and where we wanted to live. And there's a funny story in that. We were hunting for apartments, staying in Airbnb, in a couple Airbnbs, trying to figure out neighborhoods. And I when I searched for neighborhoods, I for some reason thought that Doral was going to be a great option for us. And this was like 2015. So Doral did not have nearly as many options of things to do or anything like that as they do now. And on the day I was going to sign for an apartment, I talked to my boss, and my boss said, and he said, "Oh, hey, how's your apartment search going?" I said, "It's great. We found an apartment. We're about to sign." And he said, "Oh, where?" I said, "In Doral." He's like, "Oh, hold on. You've just got to Miami. You're 21 years old. You're telling me you're going to go and rent an apartment in Doral?" And then he basically pulled me off to the side. He said, "Don't sign the contract. Go spend a week in South Beach." And then he drew me a map of South Beach and said, "Stay away from these areas. Look in these areas. You'll find something affordable here. Go, hunt there, look around, and then you come back and tell me what you find." And then I called my wife and said, "Honey, guess what? We're not going to sign that contract."
Right.
And then we spent the weekend, and I fell in love with everything in South Beach because it's a whole world down there, right?
Right. It's a whole different world. I've always said South Beach is a place that I wish I could have lived for 1 year. Maybe when I was in law school, or just maybe even post law school, I would have loved to have spent I would have loved to have spent 1 year living in Boston, in the city, 1 year in New York City, and 1 year just in South Beach. I think it would be an amazing experience.
Yeah. We ended up spending, I think, 4 years in South Beach in a couple different areas, and it was fantastic. And before we had kids, so I mean, for us it was great. Yeah.
Did you have any late night trips to Big Pink? That's still my favorite spot.
Yeah, a couple actually lived really close by, and definitely went for breakfast a bunch of times.
Right. Okay.
Yeah,
Great, great,
yeah,
great.
yeah.
Yeah. Me now, I get to South Beach once or twice a year. That's it. But
Yeah,
I still love going. Yeah. So
same, yeah.
that's great. So already your boss gave you fantastic advice. New guy, young kid coming down. Make sure you're living in the right spots. Definitely different than maybe being 30, 35 with a few kids. Then Doral could be good if that's where
Yeah.
you want to live, but definitely not when you're young. So smart guy. So okay, so you were there, Burger King for 4 years, and what are some key takeaways that you learned from your time there?
So my experience there, it was fantastic. I mean, I worked with so many smart people, with from so many different backgrounds. I mean, had the MBAs and people from Brazil, but also plenty of people from here, in the US. And I think the biggest learnings that I had were a lot of the big decisions did not come down to big, complicated models or Excel or complicated formulas. Whenever we had big decisions to be made or significant decisions, there was a lot of analysis to be made, but it always came down to really basic logic and basic questioning of, was this the right decision? And I learned how to do the basic math that helps you make good decisions there.
Right. So what's an example of a, major decision that would fall into that category?
Well, I'll put in my world. I worked in FP&A, which is financial planning and analysis. So we used to work on the budgets, the global budget for the Burger King brand, and also I worked with Tim Hortons. And at the time, it was three brands: Burger King, Tim Hortons, and Popeyes. Some of the decisions we had to make around budget were, basically, how much do we expect to grow next year?
Right.
Is it going to be 10%? Is it going to be 8%? Is it going to be 6%? And at the end of the day, you had, for Burger King, upwards of 8,000 restaurants in the US. And the math to get to how much we were going to grow was actually pretty simple. It's how many restaurants, how many restaurants are we going to build? How many are we going to close? How much do we expect them to sell? And of the restaurants that already exist, and how much do we expect to grow sales,
Right.
basically? And then everything flows from that. And, given the size of the business, it sounds really complicated, and there are complexities to it, but at the end of the day, you follow pretty basic logic to figure
Right.
out what's going to happen.
And it's basic money math. You may have a few extra zeros in the end, but so basically some key takeaways is don't be intimidated by the size of it. It can still be relatively simple despite it being a complex business, multi, in international, right, mega brand, but it still comes down to basic fundamentals and just a few extra zeros.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay. I think that's amazing advice. Yeah. And for us at the law firm, at Rossen Law Firm, we are trying to make data driven decisions. And on one hand, we want to have as much data as we can. On the other hand, we're debating, well, what are just, we just need a handful of KPIs to really go on and, and just use and not go too granular, because then it could end up, sometimes paralysis or analysis by paralysis. But for decision making for us, what I've learned over the years, I think to make consistently good decisions is the hardest thing for people to do, right? In us, whether it's criminal law, criminal defense, right? Just basic things is, do I speed through that light or not? Do I drink and drive or not? Do I, when confronted with an issue, do I, how do I react, right? Things like that. But also when we're talking about, well, do we have to hire somebody? Do we have to fire somebody? What do we do, right? A business opportunity comes up. And for us, it's about really a few things. It's about having core values that are very well defined. We have 5 core values at the firm. And it is about our mission, our vision, and our 1, 3, and 5 year plan. And whenever an opportunity presents itself, and one thing is, I feel like there are opportunities that present itself every single day. For me, it's more of the rubric is, okay, Does this align with our core values? Yes or no, right? No, we're done. Yes. Okay. Well, is this aligned with our mission? Okay. Yes. Then is this aligned with our 1, 3, and 5 year goals, or is this just a shiny object, a toy for Adam to play with, or um, daydream about, right? Which happens a lot in my position, because I'm always thinking and planning and daydreaming about different ideas in the future. And if it fits all into place, then okay, yes, we can move forward. And if it doesn't, then it might be a not now situation, meaning if everything else is a yes, but it doesn't fit our 1 or 3 or 5 years, then maybe it's a not now. And if it doesn't align with our core values or our mission, then the answer is just a flat out no. And we've had that rubric for the last maybe 2.5 years, and it's helped tremendously. We don't always get it right. We're still, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but it's helped tremendously.
That's a really good way of putting it. And that's the way internally, me and my team, that's how we approach it as well. We spent a lot of time this year on defining values, defining our longer term goals. At the end of the day, it informs what you want to do, but I think the biggest value from it is exactly what you said. It's helping to decide what not to do, because once you get a thing going and you start to have some success, it's easy to get distracted and to try to do too many things, and then you shoot yourself on the foot because you can't do everything well. You can't be excellent at everything. And using the values, using the mission and the vision, and setting clear goals helps you to eliminate all of the distractions and just focus on what you need to focus on. And once you do that exercise, and every time you revisit it and you refine it, it just makes it so much easier for you to make the right decisions for the business.
Right. Yeah. Agree 100%. And, for most entrepreneurs, they want to see the opportunity in everything. But I really think the best business owners, the best entrepreneurs understand the value of no. And we have to get better at saying no. And it's just about protecting, our time and our focus. So, Jonathan, I think that's amazing advice. What we're going to do now is we're going to take a quick break to hear a word from our sponsor, the Rossen Law Firm. And when we come back, I want to talk about, what you're doing now, your fractional CFO services, and how you kind of made that decision to move into that role, and what kind of people you're working with. So we'll be right back.
When something bad happens, who do you turn to? In South Florida, the answer is the Rossen Law Firm. Criminal and DUI defense for when bad things happen to good people. The Rossen Law Firm is a team of 8 criminal defense attorneys, including 2 board-certified criminal trial experts. They also have federal and white-collar divisions in the practice. To learn more about the team and how they can help you, connect on Facebook and Instagram at Rossen Law Firm. Also find helpful and entertaining videos on Rossen Law Firm YouTube channel. Just check this episode's description for all the ways you can connect.
And we are back on the Success in South Florida podcast with Jonathan Rosa. Now, Jonathan, you're currently, your newest endeavor is a fractional CFO company called Mora CFO. So talk to us about the decision to start that company, and what are you doing to help business owners and entrepreneurs?
Yeah, so after 4 years at Burger King, and most of that time in FP&A doing budgets and forecasts and strategy for these big companies, in 2019 my first son was born, and at that time a lot of things were going on in my head. I had grown a bit, but I was kind of at a decision point or an inflection point where I wanted to decide, okay, my son was born. Do I continue this corporate path and just try to grow and become a VP or an SVP or something and go to the C-suite? Is that the end goal that I want for me and my family, or do I pivot? And if I pivot, when do I pivot?
So you're doing your own vision analysis, right?
Exactly. And I did it on a personal level. And that's what I do with clients as well. I think everyone should do that. And doing that analysis, I spent, a couple months. I figured I wanted to go back to my original goal, which was to be a business owner like my dad, to help people like my dad, and to help the community that brought me up. And I also wanted to have the flexibility, right, of being your own business owner. I used to spend my summers in Brazil. Being in corporate, I didn't really see that happening or having much control over my time, given how hectic the corporate life could be. So I put all of these pieces together. I figured it's not really a good time, right? I'm still really young and I've got a mouth to feed, but it's not really going to get that much easier as my expenses go up, as kids start going to school, et cetera, et
Right.
cetera, et
Yeah.
cetera. So I decided I'm just going to go head in and do this now and suffer whatever it will be, because I expect, 4 or 5 years from now, I'll have figured things out.
Well, I think that's a
Uh,
brilliant decision because people will sit around and wait for permission to do something, right? They'll wait for their friends or their family or the world to kind of give them a sign or give them permission, but nobody needs permission, right? If you want to do something like that and take that leap, as long as it's well thought out and planned, you should. And so, 2019, right? That it was a different world in 2019. That was before COVID. My first son was born in 2019. So my firstborn was is August. When was your son born?
June.
Okay, so right, very very close to one another. And so okay, so you start. And when did you start the company?
So I started the company in October. I left RBI, the Burger King parent company, in October. I think it was October 17th, if I'm not mistaken. Took a week off and then started working on the project. I had already been thinking it through, talking to my dad a bunch about what should I do? And I kind of had the basic pieces in mind, and I started working from there.
And so how did you ultimately reconcile the fear of good paycheck, established company, job security versus, right, I might not get paid for 3 months. And I'm going to have to hustle to get clients, right? So how did you kind of reconcile that and then but take that real true leap of faith and go beyond the fear? Because that's something that we talk a lot about on this show, is really moving past the fear and being willing to bet on yourself.
So a couple things. It was kind of that logic of it's not really going to get easier. And I did some math around opportunity costs, basically. I was at a manager level at that point, and I figured, I've got my first son, right? We're starting a family. If I wait 2, 3, 4 years, my salary is likely to continue to go up, right? And maybe I'll be making 200 or 300K a year. It's going to be harder to step away and give that up than for me to step away now. So even though I'm going to lose a salary now, waiting more time, it's going to be harder and harder for me to make that decision, because the income that I'm going to have to replace once I start my business is going to be bigger, right? And for sure, my costs are going to go up, my living expenses. So there was fear, absolutely. And in retrospect, had I known that like 5 months later we'd be going into a pandemic, I
Right. Yeah.
probably wouldn't have made that decision. But in hindsight, I'm glad I did. And that was kind of the thing. I really, thinking back on it, I'm sure a lot of people have seen Jeff Bezos talking about that regret minimization strategy of, at the end of your life, looking back and thinking what you regret not having done. And I
Right.
kind of used that like method, I would say.
So back in 2008, when I left the prosecutor's office, I had a same analysis. Now, except the salary was much lower working for the government, but I'm 26 years old. I've been a prosecutor for 18 months. There were some things that happened in the prosecutor's office that I became disillusioned with. And I said, I'm not really helping people the way that I want to help people. So I think I want to be a criminal defense attorney. I want to help people in this way. And couldn't even pay my student loans, but working, 12-hour days, because I did love it. I loved being in court. I loved criminal law, but I just wasn't able to help, at least where I was in that office at that point. I wasn't able to help people the way I wanted to. But I did the same analysis. I'm like, well, I'm making X amount a year. I'm 26. I'm no wife, no kids yet. Now is the easy time to do it. I couldn't imagine being 35 or 40 and getting to a point where, you're making, at least at the prosecutor's office, you're never really truly making great money, but where you have that and you have that stability and you have two kids and you have, a wife that may or may not work. and to go, wow, it's a lot harder to leave at that age, and start over than it is when you're young. So that was a big part of my analysis, and it worked very well for me. But the rest of the stuff, the business, we didn't really have, we didn't have a written business plan. We didn't have a marketing plan. We had some ideas and things, my old partner and I, and it's funny looking back of how bad the ideas were, but we kind of stumbled into a million other opportunities. And so you make this decision, right? You get the courage and you go. And October, November, December, January, February, before COVID, what are you doing to hustle and get clients and, right, make money and grow the business?
So my dad was a key part of it, right? Without his support, I probably wouldn't have made the decision. He basically gave me his blessing and said, "Look, go do it. I'll help you figure it out." And he was always had that position. Not everyone has that person, and that's why I respect people who don't do that, don't go that path, because often the support network makes all the difference, right? I didn't have a very clear plan, but I had an idea. So I started. My dad's restaurant was my pilot, basically my pet project, right? So I came in and what I started was looked at my dad's restaurant. How can I improve the quality of the bookkeeping and the payroll and automate all this stuff and start to clean up this data so I can better understand how to serve the business, how to free up the owner's time. And I started there. And then I started to connect with other business owners, started to network, started to close some small deals and really spent a bunch of time in it. I figured out, we started offering bookkeeping. I quickly learned that I don't know how to use QuickBooks, and I was never going to be good at QuickBooks. So I found how to hire people that were good at QuickBooks. And by the pandemic, I had, found some clients already. I had half a dozen clients, but the pandemic was a really interesting pivotal moment.
Right. Yeah. And so COVID was a very pivotal moment for us as well. So here you are getting in your groove, right? You're learning and you're learning on the fly, right? It was probably, again, late nights, weekends, right? Googling things and just, going to the school of Google, right? And maybe listening to podcasts. That's what it was when me and my old partner split in 2015. That's what it was for me. It was, okay, we were together for 7 years and it was, we never grew. I never had any employees. It was me and him. And I said, I don't want to live in this world anymore. I want to build a firm, but I knew nothing about it. So I listened to, I dove deep into podcasts and blogs and just anything I could about marketing, management, business. And during COVID, we had just grown to six people. For a criminal defense firm, is still relatively large to have 2 lawyers, 3 staff, and we had an in-house marketing director. And, in my mind, I'm like, oh my God, I have all these employees, 6 people, what are we going to do? But I've been around long enough, right? I don't think I'm old, but I've been around long enough to know that Warren Buffett basically says, when others zig, you zag, right? When everybody wants to buy, that's when you should sell. And when everybody wants to sell, that's when you should buy. So I saw everybody panic, and we've always kept enough money in the firm. And I just said, all right, I got everybody. No worries. Everybody's laying people off, asking people to take pay cuts. I go, I'll take the pay cut. It's not forever, but let's keep this thing stable for 6 months with who we have, and let's see where the world is. And we just double and triple down on marketing. A lot of my criminal defense lawyer friends, look, part of me was jealous. One bought an RV and drove around the country. And when we did start Zoom Court about 2 months into, about May of 2020, he's appearing in a different location every time with his RV. And I was jealous. It was great, but I couldn't do that because I had a firm and I had people that depended on me. And I also had, our son was 6 or 7 months at that age. And the only thing worse than being trapped in our house with a 7-month-old would be trapped in an RV with a 7-month-old. So,
Tell me about it.
yeah. So, but we tried everything, and the firm, we were doing very well before that. We really were. But we tripled the firm in a year in revenue, and we doubled in size in 2 years in a row. We went from 6 to 13 to 20 employees within 2 years. And a lot of people think, oh, we came out of nowhere, but no, it's been 17 years in the making. But really, when everybody else stuck their head in the sand like an ostrich, we rolled up our sleeves and we grinded and grinded and grinded. And that was and look, we got a little lucky. Florida opened very quickly, so for us it was not too bad. But the first, I remember I got my PPP loan the first round, and I cried, and I was in the office by myself, and I cried, just tears of joy and relief. So what was that like for you? Kind of that fledgling business, you're starting to get some initial success, and then the whole world stops. Did some of your clients panic and did and want to cut costs and cut your costs, or did you kind of have to steer them on the right path? Like, what did you do?
So the interesting thing in the pandemic was I kind of took that zig and zag approach. I was definitely worried. I saw that it was weird, right? It looked like the world was ending. They were saying it was going to be 15 days, and I'm thinking, look, I'm not a at the time we were positioning ourselves as more of an accounting firm, just because CFO firm is kind of hard for people to understand what you do.
Right.
It's still a new idea to a lot of people. But I knew inside that even though we were kind of positioning ourselves as an accounting firm, in fact, what my focus was helping businesses grow, helping businesses get more profitable, focusing on the growth of our clients. When I looked at it from that perspective, I didn't really have like a vision or a mission defined at that point. But when I looked at it from that perspective, I said, okay, if I'm in the owner's seat, like I always look from the client's perspective, what does this client need right now? And I had a bunch of restaurant clients, right? Because my dad was a restaurant owner,
Right.
bunch of
That,
restaurants, and
that was
they were
rough
one
for
of the
them.
worst hit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
really rough. And it's obvious. What do they need? They need cash. They need some buffer, right? And restaurants often don't have much buffer, right? They
Right.
operate on
Slim,
thin
slim margins.
margins,
Yeah.
slim margins, low cash reserves. So I immediately started researching Google. Google was my ally, and I started to look for the programs that were coming out, right? Obviously, there was a bunch of news out there about the disaster loans and the PPP. Later on, for the restaurant, there was the Restaurant Revitalization Fund, which was huge. That was a grant that basically replaced like a year of lost revenues.
Oh, wow.
So that was huge. So what did I do? I pivoted and I basically set up a consulting project for all of these clients and said, hey, I'm going to charge you X and I'm going to get everything in line. We already have some of your information. I am going to focus solely on keeping you alive, keeping you afloat. We're going to get everything buttoned up so that the minute these programs open up, we're gonna apply for them. We're going to make sure that you're at the front of the line and that you have all of your information perfect so that you have the highest chances of getting funding.
Right.
And I got
Some of
millions
them
of
were very
dollars.
limited. Some of them were very limited and ran out quick. Others, stuck around for a little while.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, some of these programs, the Restaurant Revitalization Fund, for example, if you weren't there on the first day with all of the information and complete your application, and if it wasn't complete, you weren't going to get it
Okay.
because there were tens of thousands of people applying on the first day because it was a grant. You didn't have to repay it. And I had one client that got, I think, $2 million,
Yeah.
$1.5 million from this grant. So by doing that, by focusing on basically from the client's perspective, what they needed at that time, didn't matter if I was selling bookkeeping, if I was selling payroll, whatever it was. At that moment, I just put myself in the client's perspective and we pivoted and we just set that up and sold them what they needed to survive.
Right. And look, the restaurateur doesn't know that, right? They know everything about how to run front of house, back of house, right? They that's it. They, and how to make how to make the donuts. But they're not there as true business people. They don't really know. So it seems, what you did was probably life-changing for a lot of these restaurateurs and business owners.
Yeah, I kid you not. I had a conversation a week ago with a new client who's in Pennsylvania, owns a restaurant. And he lost this year, he's expecting to do half of what he did the year before the pandemic in sales, right?
Wow.
So this
Still,
is
still this year.
still, and he told me over the phone, I asked him, did you get this fund? right? Which would have probably brought in for him 500K at least or more in revenues. He said, because of one page I was missing that the CPA couldn't get in time, I lost $500,000.
No, it's terrible. Terrible.
So I can fortunately say that none of my clients went through that. And I mean, it sucks to hear that, right? But that's at that time, that was the focus that I had. But today, our focus, it continues to be just helping our clients grow, right? It's not, our focus isn't, it's not compliance. It's not just it. We do help with compliance. We do help with organization, but it's about helping them get on the right path to actually achieving their goals.
Right. So it seems, you're that partner that comes into the business, right? To be that advisor, the consultant, the coach, the partner, where you're there, your client's success is your success. And right. And so it's as if you and them are, are part owners in a way,
Yeah.
although you're not, it's kind of that. Yeah. And so that must be really fulfilling when you're able to help small business owners, which really I believe the country, the United States is founded upon the blood, sweat, and tears of small business owners.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, when you do what you love, right, it just makes it so much easier to get up every day to grind and to do what you need to do, right? Because you know the impact you're having. The cool thing is like when in whatever business you do, but for me, as I serve these business owners, if I do my job right, I'm helping these business owners grow. I'm helping them sleep better at night because they're not worried as much about if they're going to make payroll, right? They have a sound plan in place. And if their business thrives, if their business grows, guess what? The whole economy, the jobs, the families that that business supports, the local economy, all of that is impacted by businesses, small businesses that are healthy, right?
Right. Yep.
And that's just the joy of being able to serve this community.
So here we are in 2023. This is, you're 4 years in. And so what does success mean to you at this point?
Success to me, well, you mean what it looks like moving forward?
Right. Yeah. What's your what's, what's kind of on the horizon for you to grow the business, but also as more of a larger thought exercise, what is your definition of success?
My definition of success is being able to make money, helping business owners thrive, grow, have their best year, have their best decade in their business and with their families, and to be able to, at the same time, enjoy my family, enjoy my time, and and one of the reasons I left was to be able to have more flexibility. I have been religious about not working much more than the 9 to 5 or 6 because I want to put my kids to sleep every night.
Right. Yeah.
And that's success to me.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Right. I think people can't have it all, right? People can work hard, grow a business, be financially successful, but also have time to be there with their children and have time to be involved, and not just physically, but mentally involved, and be a good spouse as well. I think you can. It just, it's hard, takes some foresight and planning. And maybe it takes a little bit of emotional intelligence, right, to understand and do things. But, if you make your business more efficient, use technology, and create good systems and processes, you can, there's things that can be automated and where you're not doing everything, and you can be a little bit of everything and have that. So I think nowadays it's easier than ever for somebody who, wants that, who makes a conscious decision to have that type of life and that type of success, and you can have it. That's something that I'm working very hard to continually to make sure that we grow the firm, but also that I am living that exact, lifestyle.
Yeah. It's not easy, right? Because depending on the career you choose, I mean, I say that that's the ideal for me, but obviously there are exceptions, right? I travel. There are times when I'm going to have to work, right? But I want to balance that and be able to spend more time with family. And at the end of the day, it's possible. It's everyone needs to figure out what, work-life balance looks like for them. But I preach, very often, what I live. I don't believe in the hustle culture. Yes, there are times when you need to put your head down and work and get things done, but that should be a phase, right? That shouldn't be your lifestyle, because there's so much richness in life and spending time with the ones you love and taking care of your mental health, your physical health. And I know that in the law, I've worked with a couple lawyers, so I know that there's very much that hustle mentality, that that workaholism that's so inherent, and it's very inherent in the corporate business culture as well. And that was one of the kind of things that I wanted to rebel against. That wasn't what I wanted for me and for my family. So that's what success looks like for me.
Perfect. I absolutely love it. And so, Jonathan, where can people find you, get in touch with you if anybody wants to reach out about just, advice that you have or your services? What's the best way to get in touch with you?
Go to my website, mouracfo.com, Moura CFO.com, or search for me on LinkedIn. My name is Jonathan Rosa. Search me up on LinkedIn and you can probably find me pretty easily and reach out.
Perfect. Amazing. Well, look, thank you so much for being on the show. It was a pleasure to talk to you and, learn more about you and the success that you've had, and really, the inspiration that you can give people from all walks of life, not just, young immigrants, but really anybody, to see what you've done and how you've learned and grown and become a successful business owner yourself, and how you're helping, restaurateurs and other business owners and entrepreneurs, go through, be just better small business owners, which again I think is the backbone of our country. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And, and I hope anybody who wants to reach out can, they know how to get in touch with you and can find you.
Thanks again, Adam. I really appreciate the opportunity. I'm honored to be able to participate in the podcast.
Of course, it's my pleasure.